Well, today marks a very special day for me. I hit 1,000 subscribers. YouTube sent me my plaque. I believe the plaque for 1,000 subscribers is paper, and it's very nice. But in all honesty, I want to thank each and every one of you for watching, supporting, and subscribing to my channel. I love the feedback, I love the questions, and I love that I can help you. So I want to say thank you. Well, now that the fun is over, time to get back to work. Today's project is a 2009 Kawasaki KX250F. She's a little rough, but she's got some good bones to her. I gave it a quick once over when I was purchasing the bike, and it looks like the cam timing's off, but it also looks like that somebody's had the top end potentially apart on this already and just didn't put it back together correctly. I was told that it was recently rebuilt, and when they were riding it, it just kind of shut off. It didn't seem like it locked up, and it doesn't feel like it's locked up. It's actually turning. I'm not going to turn it too much because, like I said, cam timing is off, but I was also told that this thing is a little difficult to go into second gear when you're wringing it out. There's a potential for bent shift forks or damaged gears in the transmission. So for me, first step, best bet on this thing is going to be just to pull the engine, and we're going to tear it apart and split the cases and take a good look at everything on this. Pretty nasty in there. The clutch doesn't look too fantastically bad. That didn't even need an impact gun. Go ahead and take a close look at the threads on this crankshaft nut. Non-existent. We'll see if we can clean up the threads on the crankshaft itself. All right, let's get these cases split. This crankshaft, I believe, is stuck in this bearing on this side. I'm having a hell of a time getting it apart, so I'm going to press the whole crank and everything out and then deal with it on the other side. Normally what I would do is leave the crankshaft inside the case and press it straight out, but it's not coming out of this case, so I'm going to have to fight with that a little bit. Screen's got a little junk in there we'll clean up. It's just a lack of maintenance, people. Just not changing the oil. What we definitely want to look at, it's not usually the teeth that are bad, it's usually these dogs that are rounded off or damaged, or inside the gears rounded off where they connect. See right there, that gear has got a little bit of rounding off on the nose. That could definitely cause it to jump out of gear and other issues. That one's definitely rounded off right there. She is out. Okay, wow, that's way over spec. And that's too far over to be just wear. So yeah, we should just be a tick over 3 inches. This is 3.145. Oh, and there you go. 79.97 millimeter. The standard size on these is 77 millimeters. So somebody has put, it's Vertex, somebody's put a big bore kit in this, which is about 3 millimeters over. Well, that's cool. And the cylinder looks like it's in pretty decent shape. So I will order the big bore piston for this. I also ordered a tap. This is a reverse thread or left-hand thread for the crankshaft to clean this up here. And of course we'll get a new nut. So that's a M16. So yeah, these appear to be stage 1 hot camshafts with the big bore kit and everything. This thing ought to rip pretty good. I don't think I'm going to order new transmission gears because they're just stupid expensive. I'm going to try and probably find a used transmission that's in good shape, and I'll pick and choose the best gears out of it and just build one. So I need to definitely check these valves to see if I need to order valves, and we'll get these cases in the parts washer and get all this stuff cleaned up like brand new, and then we can go ahead and assess what we need to get. It's a little tough coming out. I'm going to check that one for sure. Now there's lots of fancy and sophisticated ways in checking these valves, but I find you can get a pretty good look at them by just chucking them up in your drill. I'm not sure if you can see that. That valve is bent. That valve is also bent. And that would definitely coincide with what we saw on the top of the piston. That one seems to be mildly decent. As does that one. So we'll clean up the exhaust valves. We're going to have to replace the intake valves. I was able to pick up a very nice used transmission. This thing's in great condition. The only issue with it was this small gear at the end. It has some pitting on it, which I was able to take off my old transmission and put on here. And with this transmission here, I can see where the problem was. It's kind of strange, like some of the gears were actually on here backwards, but this center gear is supposed to rotate freely, and it's really bound up. It doesn't really want to turn, so it doesn't want to go in gear. So that's the problem with that particular transmission. So I will save this for parts for another build. Got some nice new kibble white valves, white diamond series, to replace those bent intakes that we had. So at this point I'm going to go ahead and get this head back together. Now before I start doing any shim work, I want to go ahead and address these camshafts. So basically they have some hot cams in here, and nobody ever bothered to swap over the auto decompression onto these. So with this big bore kit and everything, this thing must have been a bear to kick. I ended up just picking up a used core crankshaft just so I could get the auto decomp mechanism out of it. Might be a good time to show you how this auto decompression works. So this is a weight on a spring, and when you're kicking this thing, it's not spinning fast enough to throw the weight out. So what happens as this comes around, this little nub sticking up here will actually hold your exhaust valve open a little bit to release some of the pressure from the cylinder. As it gets spinning faster, this weight will spin out, and you can see on here it's a flat surface, which will no longer touch the valve, giving you full compression. So if I spin that, that weight comes flying out. Well, now I got to see if I can fix these bunged up threads here on this crankshaft to make sure that this is going to be okay. What this is, an M16 by 1.5, and it's a left-hand thread. So in other words, it tightens to the left. So it may confuse you with the righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. And that's probably what happened here and why that they damaged this. So we're going to see if we can retap this thread, clean it up. I think we should be able to be okay. Now we got our cases all cleaned out, got our new transmission built, made sure it's shifted properly, which is important. Also, this screen in here, there's an O-ring on the top and an O-ring where it goes here, so we're going to make sure that those are there. Bearings are all oiled up real nice. Crankshaft has been in the freezer overnight. But first I want to start getting my RTV sealer on this case. I like to use Permatex Ultra Black or Ultra Gray to get an even coating. I use a hard rubber roller. You can get them on Amazon, fairly inexpensive. I think I got 2 of them for like $5 or $6. Once you get a light coating on here, it's easy to get the proper thickness on your cases. If you put too much of this with your finger, what ends up happening as you tighten these cases up, it could squeeze inside the case, usually break off, and then get caught in your oil return, which is never good. This will put just the right amount. Crankshaft's been in the freezer. Get a little heat on our inner race, and it should help to slide this thing in. If you remember right, we had a hell of a time getting this piece apart, getting this piece pressed out, so we may need to use our crankshaft puller for it, but so this is going to sit here against the case and help pull it through. But I need to put something on the other side to balance it out. If you have a flat piece of metal or a socket, usually works. So what this is doing is it's pulling on the crankshaft and pushing on the case, and that helps to pull that crankshaft through that bearing. it is, pulls it right in. This is the easiest and safest way to do this, as it will not damage the crankshaft. Once you got your cases all bolted together and torqued down, obviously make sure everything spins free. I'm going to get some blue Loctite on these bolts. I generally use blue Loctite on anything inside the motor that could come loose, rattle loose, and cause damage. That kicker gear's got a broken tooth on it. Didn't even notice that. I will certainly have to get one of those. Just feeding a little bit of oil into the oil pump. Try to get this stuff primed. Can't go wrong with too much oil. Now this nut doesn't need any thread locker on it. It's peened over, so once you tighten it, it will hold. If we remember on this nut, we need to tighten counterclockwise. Well, on this side I'm stuck. I can't go any further until I get this kicker gear. Wish I would have noticed it earlier. But I can go ahead and start getting the top end together, so that's what we're going to do. So if you remember, we got our big bore cylinder, really good shape. I went ahead and got a brand new piston for it. It's 79.97, generally would be 77 millimeter is the standard size for the 250, so BB, big bore. So first thing we need to do, as with all of these, obviously make sure we get all the parts. We got a wrist pin, 2 circlips. We got our piston. It's got its own little cage there. Beautiful. Instructions on how they want us to set up the rings, and of course our ring set. So with our ring set, what we need to do is check our ring end gaps in the cylinder to make sure that they are correct. Basically, this piston has 1 compression ring and your oil control rings. Now, when you look on your ring, you want to look for a mark. This one has an R. Sometimes it'll have a dot, a punch mark, something. That's generally going to mean that you're facing this ring up. So what we're going to do is put this in the cylinder. We'll use our piston to square it up. And what we're looking to do is check that ring gap to make sure that that's within spec. If that gap is too tight, as this ring heats up, those could collapse, cause a bind, and break the ring, break the piston, damage the cylinder. So we need to make sure that that is within spec. If it's too wide, usually it's too wide because they're just worn or the cylinder's worn. Your instructions from Vertex and most manufacturers are going to give you information on your ring gap placement on the piston, and it's also going to give you your ring gap measurements. On this particular one here, they're basically saying if you're doing in inches, they want 0.004 to 0.006 inches per inch of bore. So this cylinder measures out at 3.146 inches. We're going to multiply that by 0.004. 146 times 0.004 equals 0.0125, or if you round it up, 0.013 inches. 0.013 inches is going to equate to 0.33 millimeter. So as long as our gap is that size or larger, we are safe. .013 is too tight. .012 is also too tight. I'm going to file these ring end gaps just a touch. Now these are flat jaws, they're not knurled or serrated, which could possibly damage the ring, but we're only taking off a very little bit. So I've got this ring gap squared in my vise. I'm going to take a very small flat file and just take a little bit off. We really don't need much. I'm going to keep that as flat as we can, and we'll do both sides. So that's still a little on the tight side. I'm going to go a little bit more. Best bet on this thing is go a little at a time, because if you go too big, you can't put the material back on again. So you're better off doing it in a couple of steps. So there it is. Should be a very light drag. And we're at 0.013 inch or 0.33 millimeter. That's what they call for on this one. Now on the oil control side rings, we're just going to make sure we have 10/1000ths on each one. So I've never had to file one of these ever. Bigger is fine. When installing your rings on your piston, pay particular attention to the orientation of the piston. Generally towards the exhaust side or the front of the engine, you will have an arrow, a mark, that's going to point towards your exhaust. And all of your ring orientations are going to coincide with this mark. Go ahead and get one of your circlips in the piston. Make sure it sits down in that groove. This will definitely make it easier. Once you get your rings installed, next step is we're going to get the piston in the cylinder. Now you could certainly go ahead and put your piston on your connecting rod right now, and then try to struggle to get this on while the crankshaft's moving in the whole 9 yards. So what we want to do is get our piston started in our cylinder while it's on the bench, and then all we have to do is slide our wrist pin through. So much easier. So let's make sure we got our orientation correct. This is going to be the front of the engine. Our piston is also going to face the front of the engine. So what we'll do is just flip this over, maintaining our orientation. Now on the back of the cylinder, this has little chamfers, which means just a little sort of routed out, if you will, to help the rings slide in. Now they're a lot better on the OEM cylinders. This cylinder, the chamfer kind of sucks. So I'm going to really be careful about getting these rings started, especially the oil control ring rails, because they will bend up around the piston if you're not paying attention, and when that happens, you will score the cylinder up and damage it. So we take a good look around. The rings haven't rolled back. We're in good shape. And before you put the piston in, put a little bit of oil in your cylinder, help slide it around without scoring anything up too bad. I already had oil in it from when I cleaned it up. So at this point here, we're ready to attach our cylinder and piston to our connecting rod. Now we have to get our second circlip in. These circlips' only goal in the world is to fall down inside your crankcase to never be seen again. So we're going to thwart that by putting a rag this way. If it does fall, it'll just fall on the rag. These things can be a little bit of a pain. Not too bad. Now, tips with these things. You want to make sure they're 100% in the groove once you have them installed. And number two, when you're using a screwdriver or whatever it is to push it in, don't bend them. If you bend them too far and they lose their shape, they won't hold and they'll fall apart, and then you got damage to your motor. Now, wasn't that easier than trying to fight with a connecting rod that's moving around? Make sure you got your dowels on. On your head bolts, you want to get a little bit of oil on your threads and on your washers. Next, you just want to put your impact gun on this and just send them to the moon. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just going to use this to lightly take up the slack. Saves a lot of time. And now we'll torque them to the proper spec. Now we tighten these in a sequence, starting from the left front, right rear, left rear, right front. And these are to be torqued to 32 foot-pounds. However, I like to do them in a couple of stages, so I'll do 10, 20, 32. Kawasaki does not specify that you need to do that, but I like it. Snug these bad boys. 5 foot-pounds. That seems about right. I'm just going to hit these one more time. Genuine chain cam. Throw a zip tie on your cam chain, so in case it falls down you can retrieve it. Put your chain retainer inside the engine. Next step is to make sure our engine is on top dead center so we can get our cams in, get our cam timing straight. Now you can go ahead and put your flywheel and all that stuff back on and then look at your timing marks, but there's a simpler way. Either take a long screwdriver or a straw, stick that down inside your cylinder, and you'll feel the top of the piston. And as you rotate the engine, the piston will come up and then go back down, and then come up and go back down. So what we're looking for is the piston to be at the very top of its travel, no longer moving up or moving down. And you'll feel it. There's drag as you turn this, as the piston rings scrape against the cylinder wall. But when you get to top dead center, piston at its topmost travel, or bottom dead center, piston at its bottommost travel, it feels really loose. So you can grab the crankshaft and kind of just walk it back and forth. And you can see it goes down, 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 down. It's like right in between there. There's going to be your top dead center. Now, a lot of these, the Woodruff key will face directly up the engine when it's on top dead center. This particular Kawasaki does not do that. So literally, this is the easiest way to figure it out. Now when you're on top dead center, we can go ahead and get our cams in. I'm going to start with our exhaust cam, and on the 2010, and we'll have 2 marks on it. Dot facing west and a dot facing north. That's how you want it to go, and this dot facing west is going to line right up with your cylinder head. Not a big deal if you don't get it the first time. So once you make sure you're still on top dead center and you get your cam in, you want this part of the chain to be taut. In other words, like it can rotate. You want to keep that fairly tight without turning the crankshaft, and your mark should line right up with the head. If you have to, re-verify your top dead center again, because it will move slightly easy. Next we'll do our intake camshaft, and that's going to be the same. You're going to have 1 dot facing north, 1 dot facing east. And this one's the trickiest one to get in. And it's certainly easier to do it on a bench than in the frame. Top dead center, little bit of tension on the chain, timing mark lined up with the head, timing mark lined up with the head, exactly where we want to be. Now, before reinstalling our cam cap, we have two O-rings, one that's going to go underneath the cam cap and one that goes on top. Now, if you forget that O-ring or this O-ring, what you'll have is oil that will get down inside of your spark plug tube, and then you'll see oil leaking out of this little hole in the side of the head. All of these cam caps on all of these bikes have a specific tightening procedure. Kawasaki is very nice to put it right on there for you. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Once you get your cam caps torqued down properly, make sure that your cams move with minimal effort. If they're binding or dragging at all, double check your valve shimming. If you have a zero clearance, will cause a cam to bind. Also, the journals on your camshafts, head, or cam bridge could be damaged, which would be causing this thing to bind up, in which case you'd have to replace your head. There are a few little sneaky tricks to get them to work again, but this is not the video for that. So once you get that done, re-verify, top dead center, your cam marks are on, and we're going to go ahead and put our tensioner in. Now replace the O-ring. I'm going to put a little dielectric grease on there. You can just use wheel bearing grease. Remove your cap from the back, push your plunger all the way in. You're going to install this with the plunger facing up. Reinstall your spring and the rod. Now at this point here, your chain should be tight, and this is a great time to do a couple of full revolutions of the engine. Make sure nothing's binding. Bring her back up on top dead center, recheck all your marks, and that your timing is done. Before you put your flywheel on, make sure your woodruff key is in your crankshaft. Don't forget your screen before you put this back on. Well, unfortunately, with the holiday weekend and a couple extra days I had off this week, not to mention that I have to order some parts for this engine, I'm sort of out of time. So we're going to have to pick this up again next week. Hope everybody had a great 4th of July. Y'all still get all your fingers. As always, appreciate you. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.
Thanks for watching and for all of your support. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Be sure to tune in next week for the exciting conclusion of the KX250F build and updates on the YZ250F project. Hit that subscribe button, like and share.